Hello everyone. So in today's film I'm going to be doing another questions and answers film. And some of the questions I've selected are frequently asked questions, and I think it is so very kind of so many of you to still at this point have such an interest in me personally. And many of the questions that I have selected today, a lot of them are quite personal. I don't share a lot of personal aspects about myself online, of course, or with anyone for that matter, but I'm quite happy to share a little bit. And I absolutely love answering questions. As I have gotten older and older and older and older and older, I have found that one of the greatest skills I have and possess is the ability to give an answer to a question that is not only thorough, but in depth and full of information. Without even answering the question at all, I would make a marvellous politician, accountable to no one. When I produce questions and answer films, I do tend to like to work from a technological device. Usually I use my iPad, but today I am having to use my iPhone because my iPad has gone missing. I don't know where. So once I have finished today, I'm going to individually contact each of my friends, even the ones that are dead, and accuse each and every one of them of theft. Now my iPad is probably in my bag or something, but I might as well accuse all of them. It will give them something to do. I must of course again thank everyone for sending me their questions. So the first question for which that I have received asks, does your milkshake bring all the boys to the yard? No. Although, in saying that, my caviar has been reputed for alluring all the lords to the court. I've always found the idea of milkshake rather rancid. Anything with milk in it, I do tend to avoid it at all costs. I had a milk intolerance at a very young age. I didn't like it. I disliked the smell of milk. Oh, it's just not very nice at all. And it was mainly cow's milk. I could take goat's milk, but I always found the prospect of drinking milk from a cow rather foul. I mean, I think people justify it because they drink it out of a carton or it comes in a carton. But if you couldn't extract it from the carton and you had to take it directly from the cow, can you imagine putting milk in your tea? I think most people would be repulsed by taking milk if they had to extract it themselves. I certainly would not be going over to Mary the cow with my cup of tea and squeezing some milk into it. Absolutely not. I find it absolutely rancid. And I seriously believe that Mary the cow would not like you squeezing her milk out of her udder into your cup. I think it would be very presumptuous. Today I am actually drinking coffee. I have an immense coffee addiction and I have had it for a long time. I am, of course, trying to find a Coffeeaholics Anonymous. I don't know where I will find one. Just to be able to go to a room full of people that also struggle with coffee addiction and talk about how it is so alluring with its scent and its tastes so perfectly putrid and always and never fails to invigorate one. But yes, I need help. The next question is from a very marvellous account holder of the platform www.twitter.com whom follows me, and they have asked, how would you describe your style in 3 words? No frills, no colour, no nonsense. I would say my style is quite relaxed. Even though I am more formal, my overall style is quite relaxed. I like to wear clothes that are easy, yet formal, and I always like to look dressed for every occasion, so I do like to look well presented. I like to dress well. I always tend to wear bodycon on the legs. I have very long legs, and I do feel a little bit out of place when they aren't perfectly silhouetted. If I'm not wearing something that is bodycon, I like to wear something that is draped. Certainly on the legs, it's either draped or it's bodycon. But on the top half, I definitely wear a variety of things. To bodycon, to drapes, to everything. The sort of clothes that I go for though, I never really go for names. I never really like to go for trends. Of course, you all know what I think of trends. Trends are designed for the anxious. But that doesn't necessarily mean that one can't interpret a trend and find something that they themselves quite like amongst a trend or whatever. So I would definitely say that my style, I really like to look timeless. I certainly like things to be easy. They also have to be weather appropriate, and they also have to be appropriate for any event that you might have, whatever it might be, the occasion, whatever. However, I like my style to be balanced. So my style, I would say, is actually quite androgynous. I like to wear things that contrast seamlessly together so that they are all one with one another. I never really like to look too stiff either. I think when one's outfit looks quite stiff, one is in danger of appearing slightly like an erection. I like to purchase high quality pieces that will have great lifespan, that shall also remain stylish and look good on my figure. I really dress my figure as well. You know, my limbs are very long. I'm very long. I'm a bit horse-like, but my limbs limbs are very long, my hips are slightly wide, my physique is quite feminine, even though of course I am a man, and of course the man, so I like to dress in a nature that is flattering to my physique. I never like to wear things that are too feminine, as I said, or too masculine. So for example, the outfit I'm wearing is actually a dress, but I wear it almost like a kaftan sort of sari thing. And certainly when it comes to jewellery, I don't really like to wear rings or bracelets or necklaces for that matter. I don't like things that are in direct contact with my skin. I of course quite like earrings. I love earrings, and I love brooches. I love brooches. I love to wear brooches. But certainly when I wear jewellery, I like to pare down the makeup looks for which that I'm wearing. Like today, these earrings are quite full on, and I absolutely love them, a recent find of mine, but I wanted to wear a look that was quite soft, so that the look itself doesn't overbalance the earrings. And I also think that when you overdo absolutely everything, it can almost become quite jarring, and it can look just a little bit cheap. So I think it's very important to always have balance. That's not to say that you shouldn't be excessive or glamorous or whatever. I absolutely love these things, but I definitely think balance is required. And I certainly like to dress in a way that just makes me feel put together, polished, and upright and ready for the world and ready for myself. So I describe my style as being structured ease. I have ease in my style. I like it to be relaxed, but I also like it to be specific. Another question has asked, what century were you born in? I think it is very important for you all to know that I was not actually born. I was summoned here to perform a task and a purpose. And I of course was summoned on the 31st of May 21,982 BC, which makes me 24,000 at the end of this month, so it's super exciting. For my birthday I might do a day in the life of a film, or take you along to my celebrations, we shall see, but I'm very excited for that. It is so marvellous just to be able to live and live and live and live and live and never die. The next question, also a www.twitter.com account holder, has asked, do you have any plans or would consider doing a collaboration with other beauty YouTubers? Absolutely, I think it would be a marvellous thing to be able to perhaps meet and interact and learn from other people, also within my industry. I am very much excited for the potentials of that in the future. I can't necessarily confirm whether or not at this point that I shall be definitely collaborating with any other YouTubers, be them beauty gurus, but what I shall say is that there are definitely conversations being had. The next question asks, have you ever thought of running for office or being a dignitary of some sort? I think you would make for a most radical and thoughtful leader. Please do give it some thought. Thank you very much for your kind regard, I most appreciate it. I am very much a man of conviction and principle. I am indefatigable in my approach. I don't necessarily negotiate well, so I think I would make an absolutely marvellous dictator, but a very poor negotiator. I don't really like to negotiate. I of course am very calm and very easy, provided I get my own way. So I like things done a certain way. And I just think the kind of world that we live in is awfully scruffy. You know, the chandeliers are nowhere to be seen. I just find with this age, there's such a lacking of incentive. You know, the humans are so ridiculous. They're like hyenas squabbling over carrots. When you read the news, there's always something. There's always some sort of nonsense or argument. There doesn't seem to be a collective idea of what we're trying to do. And certainly if I were to be involved in office or policy making, the sort of government that I would definitely form would be a very expansionist government. Something that focuses on an incentive. You know, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to build? We have had the plane and the car for over 100 years. I think it is time that we put two and two together so that we're able to move around much faster, much quicker, so that we can move resources and people around so swiftly. I don't necessarily sit on politics or sit with ideologies. I sit with ideas. I like ideas, and I like things that can be applied to production, that can enhance our existence here on the earth whilst we're here. So I believe that it is very important, as Mithrandir said, for us to decide what to do with the time that has been given to us. We live in a world where humanity has been structured around politics, religion, economics and technology. It is indispensable that we create a world where politics, religion, economics and technology is built around humanity. The age that we know it will come to pass. I definitely think newness is required. A freshness with ideas, things that inspire us to actually get up and face the world in the day, to face the agonies and the trauma of life. Well, that is what we need, and that is what we need from high office. The next question asks, do you ever get negative comments on your films? And what are they like? It's funny you should ask this actually. I was speaking about this on Twitter just the other day. It's a very interesting question that, and there's definitely a very interesting comment that I get quite a lot, and it's a similar theme. It's always centered around men, which is very interesting. Comments like, you are going to be punished by God for tricking men into sleeping with you, or comments like, whatever man is going to take you home from the club is going to get a nasty shock. That one in particular, I find I've gotten that quite a lot, about men taking me home from the club. I object to this highly, because first of all, I am John Maclean. The only man that takes me home is the chauffeur, and the only clubs I shall be going to shall be private members, secret societies, or ones I own. I'm not going to be cavorting around in any small dungeon. It's very interesting when you look at those sorts of comments. They're very reflective of the kind of world we live in, because there's always this idea that if you are feminine in any capacity, that you are immediately using that as a device to ensnare men, as if femininity is something that is totally artificial and used to trap men. I find it so bizarre. But of course, these sorts of comments are totally insolent and irreverent. So I object to them, and I, of course, make sure that they don't appear anywhere. But it's very interesting, and it allows us to dissect and examine the thought that comes behind that, because I find it quite frightening, but also quite amusing. The last time I was in a nightclub was back in 2016, actually. It was a friend's birthday party. I had quite a good time, even though the experience was rather peculiar. We went to this club and they were all saying, oh, you'll love it, and I was very dubious about this sureness that they had and the claims they were making. So we went in and we entered, and I thought, oh, this is a lovely big entrance. And then we descended down some stair into the abyss. And the abyss had sort of pink light everywhere. I believe it was a gay bar of some sort, because everybody that was there looked quite stereotypically homosexual, sort of very puzzled by the environment I was in. So I was sort of looking around in shock and disbelief as I was looking for the gentry, or for a chandelier, or for a waiter, and it was nowhere to be seen. This swarm of barely dressed men came towards me, started waving their arms in the air and shouting words like yas and slay and girl. Now, I wasn't very sure the dialect that they were using, and I asked my friend who was with me at the time, and of course he looked very similar to them, so I presumed that he would perhaps be able to translate. And yes in English means yes, but with great vehemence. You say it with great force and pride. But slay translates into English as slay, and the other word they were shouting was girl. They were shouting girl at me, and it translates into English as girl. And of course I asked him, why are they saying this? And he said, they're showing the highest form of regard. I was very puzzled by this, of course. I think they thought I was doing some sort of peculiar exotic dance, as I was looking around in distress. Anyway, I was awfully flattered, and after that I left quite swiftly, went up the stairs and said goodbye to all of my friends. I had to go home. I really was looking for fresh air. It was so cramped, that little room. I could have touched the ceiling with my hand. So I went outside. I love the outdoors. I've always loved the outdoors. Such high ceilings, such expansive high ceilings, absolutely marvellous. But anyway, as soon as I got outside, I was able to breathe fresh air, and after that I went home. And since then I've never been in a nightclub. I don't necessarily enjoy it. What do people really talk about? That's what I've always found really strange. I don't know what to do, so I'm a bit out of place in these sorts of places. And besides, I am incredibly square. The next question asks, how does one respond to getting bullied for not being manly, as the world defines it? Thank you for your question. First of all, I should say that you owe no one who harms you anything. Certainly not a response. I shall presume the person that asked the question to be male, and I shall presume that you are somebody that is not masculine, or, as you put it, manly. I think it is very important to dissect the issue and ask the necessary questions as to why there is something wrong with not being manly. The kind of world that we live in today has a strong hatred of the feminine. Now that hasn't always been the case. There are certainly societies prior to what exists today that were more equal. There were definitely societies that classed human beings more on the basis of status or on the basis of personhood as opposed to male or female. I find it very reductive though, how there's this presumption and sort of cultural belief as well as slightly considered scientific belief. Just because you were born male or female that you're immediately going to have one kind of personality or interests or behaviours. I think that is an incredibly dangerous, reductive and repressive way to deal with human beings and to categorize them. I never deal with people on the basis of being man, woman or whatever. I deal with personalities and individuals. So when you look at people like myself, somebody that embodies a traditionally female stereotype in a decorative format, remember as well that it is only considered traditionally female by the age we live in. Because if we're to look at history, there are different periods where men would wear makeup in excess and dress in a certain fashion that is now in today's world considered to be feminine and not masculine at all. So the concepts of masculinity and femininity are only relevant to the age we live in and the time that we live in. This age that we live in, of course, the societies and the cultures that exist around the world in today's age have Abrahamic religions as their underpinning. So the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, all of these things have underpinned a lot of the cultures in the world. A lot of these ideas and ways of life were of course imported, were imposed, colonization of course, and each of these scriptures all have one thing in common. They are very anti-feminine. That can be seen in the scripture. I'm not making an attack on anyone's belief. What I'm saying is that the scripture clearly, implicitly and explicitly, always this undercurrent hatred in the sort of world that we live in of femininity. It's always perceived as this mechanism for ensnaring men. It's very much perceived as a way of tricking men. And of course, a lot of the Abrahamic religions that underpin our culture perceive woman to have been the thing that corrupted man's innocence and corrupted man's purity or whatever. I'm going to try and make it as simple as possible so that everyone can understand it, so that it's something that can be absorbed quite efficiently. The kind of world we live in puts greater value on what is masculine, on what's associated with men, than what is feminine. What is masculine is considered more valuable than what is considered feminine. Therefore, if a man is to embody what is feminine, he is perceived as being less, because being feminine is perceived as being less and wrong. It's very interesting. So I'm of course a man who chooses to embody what is considered traditionally female in a decorative format. Vilification follows. Another example of this, which is very, very blatant, the hatred of the feminine, is when you look at homosexuality and the way that it is perceived and it is received. In the carnal act between human beings, the female is traditionally passive with the male. That's how human beings are made, that's how it happens, that's how it is done. Therefore, if a man then chooses to be passive with another man, embodying what is perceived as a traditionally female stereotype in that context, it's often seen as high treason. But when you look at the sorts of prejudice and hate speech directed at people that are homosexual, it does tend to be more so towards men that are homosexual than women that are homosexual. When you see protesters against, I don't know, equal marriage or things like that, you never really hear them say things like, I don't agree with two women falling in love with one another, building a connection and choosing to build a life together. Always focus on sodomy. It's always about the sexual aspect. Their focus is always simple and on that. It's never really expansive. And the reason that I use homosexuality amongst men as an example, because it is a very valid and obvious way of presenting the point that I'm trying to make. Of course, somebody like myself who chooses to embody what is perceived as a traditionally female stereotype in a decorative format has no relevance to men that perhaps are engaging in intimacy or love or all those things. If we were to look at these as articles, what is the one thing that both of them have in common? An embodiment or a characteristic perceived as being traditionally feminine, traditionally associated with women and females. So there is a hatred of femininity that runs as an undercut through everything. It is everywhere. It's actually really, really frightening. But what I'm trying to say and make aware to you is that you must be prepared to undo the explicit and implicit, conscious and subconscious conditioning which has perhaps caused you to view yourself as less, to value yourself as less. And what I shall say to anybody that is male, that is either a man who is a homosexual man, or a man who is feminine, or a man who simply does not go along with what our societies demand a man to be like, you have to recognize that you are not in the wrong. There is a hatred of the feminine, and that is why you are vilified or persecuted or made to feel as if you are wrong. So you have to start internally undoing that. You have to start seeing yourself as being valuable and start seeing what they are saying as wrong. You also have within you the power to choose what you want to react to, and you can take responsibility for how you feel at the time. It's not necessarily about denying the fact that you could be hurt. It is a horrible thing to be harmed by anybody else. Oh yes. But at that time, you may feel like you need nurture. You may feel like you need support. Seek these things out. And if they're not to be provided by others, provide it to yourself. Take yourself out and look after yourself. That's very important. But what I'm trying to say is that you must ask the questions. Why? I always used to think that growing up, when I'd be wanting to do things, I had interests in everything. I'm a very ambiguous person, so I would have interests that were, of course, to be considered more masculine or considered more feminine. And I would always receive backlash from those that I was around for being interested in the things that were feminine, and I could never understand this. I used to think, but what is wrong with this? Just because it is feminine, how does that make it any less? And I remember being very, very young and very conscious of this and trying to express my disbelief and disapproval at this idea. It just didn't make any sense to me. It's totally unnatural to me. One interesting factor as well that I noticed very young is that if a girl or a woman was to embody what was perceived as masculine, you know, if a girl is masculine or a bit like a boy, she's seen as more valuable, as being more respectable. Women are more likely to be forgiven for being a woman if they are masculine. It's very interesting. Whereas women that are feminine or sensual or confident in their femininity are deemed as the very worst. But to summarize on your question, you must start to realize that there is nothing wrong with being feminine or not masculine or whatever it is that you are, because the people that are around you, they don't know any better. They are thick, they are idiots, and in the end they will all die. Always remember, in the end they die. They don't really matter, and in the grand scale of life they don't really matter. What you must focus on is yourself and protecting and preserving your own heart in times that it is challenged. You must not prescribe inflated value or power to anybody that wants to harm you. Absolutely not. What they are doing is wrong, and you must remember that. You are not the one that is wrong. They are wrong. And I have hopefully answered your question and explained it to you in a way that will give you clearance. And realize that being feminine in any capacity is not wrong. It is natural. Nature is feminine. And to finalize on your question, good luck. The next question asks, what SPF do you wear? Haute couture. That great big shiny ogre is not getting anywhere near me. So that more or less concludes my questions and answers film. I have had a lot of fun creating this film for you here today, and I hope that you have found today's film to be either interesting, useful, helpful or entertaining. And to be making another one of these films in this style is so very marvellous. I am enormously flattered by the continued and maintained interest that so many of you have in my work, and of course myself personally. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and of course, take care. Bye!